So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcea, and today we're joined by Alan Vey, founder of Aventus. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Alexander. Thanks for having me here.
Before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Aventus does?
Yeah, so Aventus is focused on onboarding businesses to blockchain, right? So a variety of different use cases from supply chain and logistics to loyalty and even into prediction markets and yeah, essentially spanning the various different use cases. We have a product suite that enables clients to spin up a whole blockchain ecosystem with minimal effort and time.
Okay, that's fascinating. What inspired you to create Aventus? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
Well, I think what Aventus is has been shaped by the market and by the clients over the years. So I first founded Aventus in 2017, and back then it was focused on event ticketing. So we were solving
Okay.
problems in the secondary ticketing market. Ended up doing a deal with one of the biggest in the world, Live Nation, for one of their French festivals. In the early days, this was like 2019, COVID happened, so no one was going to events.
Yeah, right.
Aventus had done an ICO, so there was capital there to build out a use case, but no market. And having learned that journey from zero to a big business using the technology, that's where we thought that's what the future of this business is going to be. So that's where I guess the inspiration came from for doing this just general businesses, onboarding Web 2 to Web 3, because we learned early on how to do it and had some success there. And yeah, the market told us where the need was.
Okay, right. And what was your background before starting this venture?
I come from a computer science background. So I had studied computer science at Imperial College in London for my undergrad. I'd then done a master's in artificial intelligence as well. This is pre LLMs, so AI wasn't quite as exciting, and Web3 was the new technology. Ethereum launched
Yeah,
in
right.
2015. I did my thesis on film rights distribution in finishing summer 2016. And founded Aventus right out of that. My professor introduced me to my first investor, and it all kind of went from there.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's go back to when you first started. So, what major challenges or gaps did you see in the market that made you think this needs to be solved?
Well, originally it was event ticketing, right? So the problem that we had seen with Aventus was that there were secondary market issues. People, when you try and buy a ticket to a concert or to some kind of big football match, you're on the website the minute it releases, and often you can't get hold of a ticket. And that's because these automatic computer programs, these
Right.
bots, buy up all the tickets and then resell them for higher on the secondary market. So we saw that blockchain technology was a viable solution to that problem, and that's what we started building. And then as we went down this journey, we found more and more problems where blockchain was a viable solution. So we decided we'll just provide the blockchains with sort of wide ranging capabilities to be able to solve many of these problems for our clients.
Okay, that's interesting. And I have a curiosity by then. So, what are the biggest challenges businesses face when trying to integrate blockchain technology with their existing systems?
So blockchain typically touches on it requires a different way of doing things. So it typically takes quite significant changes to the way companies are currently running their technology processes, right?
Yeah.
So that means it is perceived as risky, and you obviously have to, one, prove credibility. And that was challenging in the early years of the industry when you had the whole crypto market, like one controversial application of blockchain generating so many negative press stories like FTX or Terra Luna or the DAO hack back in the day, like all sorts of different things have happened. Big enterprises look at these, they don't necessarily look into the detail and separate the technology from the use case, and they just say that's a high risk area, let's not look at that. So in
Hmm.
recent years, the last year or two, that's significantly changed. The US has obviously become much, much more crypto friendly in the last 6 months. The SEC, MiCA in Europe, various regulations have emerged, kind of giving a regulatory framework, which has made businesses much more comfortable that they can adopt this technology. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge faced early on. Nowadays, it's much smoother sailing. The question is just finding use cases where the technology actually applies properly. So
Okay.
some people still don't understand the technology. It's obviously quite complex, and you need to sell the commercial side of the business because typically the benefits are wider ranging than just technological in nature. So explaining to the commercial sides, focusing on the benefits rather than the technology seems to be the key solution to getting adoption.
Right, right. And how has the landscape of blockchain adoption in business changed over the past few years?
Well, we touched on it a bit there, right, in terms of the regulatory evolution. I think we've also seen a maturity in the market where, because of the various kind of cycles, you have the crypto, the bull markets, and then the kind of crypto winters. The crypto winters will often make a lot of projects that had no solid fundamentals die off. So going through a few of those different cycles has meant that the businesses that have been around since the early days are typically fairly robust. And many of the players that are just hyped here or there fall away in those crypto winters. So there's definitely that trend. There's a regulatory trend. And then in general, like we've started seeing real use cases roll out that are adding value that couldn't be done without the technology.
Yeah,
I mean, one that we're quite involved in at the moment is prediction markets. If you look at this, if you see what Polymarket has done, both with the US election or with the Super Bowl, talking about billions of dollars in volume trading every month, and people really getting to the truth much better than polling data, much better than gambling companies. I mean,
yeah.
Polymarket predicted what the US election was going to do down to the state level 3 weeks before it closed. The polls were wrong. The gambling companies weren't even right. So
Mhm.
these kind of use cases, seeing these emerge is really incredible. I mean, we see some of the biggest Sports Illustrated has now entered into this prediction market space. So we're seeing big businesses like them, 70 years in the market, 70 million users, enter this space. To me, that is real mainstream
Yeah.
adoption and solving real problems with the technology that couldn't otherwise be solved.
Okay. And for example, what industries or sectors are showing the most promise for blockchain integration?
Well, we've got three main sectors that we look at Aventus where we find the adoption to be the smoothest. So, supply chain and logistics. Specifically, here we're talking about aviation or kind of cargo management, whether you're looking at tracing cargo through the world or you're looking at kind of weight and balance distributions within aircraft or within ships. There's a variety. These aren't necessarily the sexiest use cases, but this technology really helps there. And these are high transaction use cases. So we've done a bunch of projects in that space. Then, another very interesting one is in the energy market. So one of our clients, Energy Web, they have, Shell, Volkswagen, PayPal, people like that using their technology, big businesses. And they are looking at how you better distribute energy across the grid in a world where you no longer have a centralized power station and a centralized grid serving energy to people, but you have electric vehicles and solar panels, more decentralized energy. How do you manage that decentralized grid? And they've got really cool use cases there. And then finally, I'd probably point to loyalty. We got another client, Enigmatic Smile. I think they serve almost 500 million users in the world, and they are really focused on how can you re-envisage what a loyalty point looks like. So in a world where you do cashback and businesses are holding big amounts of debt on their balance sheet for when customers come and redeem points or cashback in their business, they can now completely wipe that debt and provide a much more efficient closed payment economy based on tokens and discount vouchers. So those are just three of
Yeah.
the really cool industries we've seen recently.
I see, I see. So, walk us through how Aventus addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
Well, I think there are a few elements, right? Obviously, technologically, we build on substrate technology, which is based on the Polkadot ecosystem. This technology is kind of, I mean, obviously, Gavin Wood was the CTO and co-founder of Ethereum. He then went on to build the most used Ethereum client, way to access Ethereum. And then he went on to build Parity and Polkadot, right? So technologically, having somebody like that who's been in it from the beginning and having learned everything and
Right.
developed the technology led to a really solid foundation for us to build on. So we use some great technology and we've tweaked that for the purpose. But I think our approach sales wise is quite different as well. We are not trying to explain to people how the blockchain works. We're not trying to get into the detail of all the technical nitty gritty. What we do is we focus on a business's use case, how they can add value, and make sure that there's an element to it that we can do better because of using this technology, else we don't go after it. And that go to market strategy has resonated a lot with clients because at the end of the day, I mean, think of the end user. When you Google something on your phone, do you care about exactly what database they're using? Not really. You want the results. And that's the kind of approach we take, right?
Okay, okay, that's awesome. And for example, when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
A lot of people still don't separate crypto from blockchain technology. So when you
Mm,
talk to them and you pitch them a solution and they find out that it's Web3 or blockchain enabled, they're like, okay, so, but we can't touch tokens. This misconception that using blockchain technology automatically means that you have to use some kind of cryptocurrency is not
yeah.
necessarily true. In many cases, it is the case, but in many cases, it's not. And then cryptocurrencies come in so many different flavors, right? Most people just think Bitcoin or Ethereum, potentially speculative assets or stores of value, when you also have the kind of utility model, the utility token model, right? Server credits. The same way you get
Yeah.
server credits for AWS, you have your server credits for the blockchain system. So helping people deal with the nuance around elements that they potentially have perceived as risky in the past, probably the biggest area of misconceptions.
And for example, how do you help businesses overcome initial resistance to blockchain adoption?
I think it's all about just building trust with the decision makers at the end of the day. It is a new technology. They are never going to know it as well as we know it. And they have to, at some point, trust somebody, right? So spending time, meeting people, shaking hands, breaking bread, the kind of basic ways of building business in a B2B setting. I think that's the main way to overcome any of the barriers. When you have that trust and then you deliver on that trust and you build a track record and other clients that can vouch for what you've done, that's key.
Okay. Also, could you share a specific success story of a client who saw significant results using your solution?
Yeah, so let's focus. What do we pick? The aviation one that I spoke about, right? So this product was live with the aviation perishables handling department at Heathrow. This has spun out into its own business now. The business is called Atmos.supply. So what the business was able to achieve was a net cost reduction of 8% for the airline. Now that doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but if you this was MVP. If you scale this up
Right.
across the industry, just using this tracking solution that the team created, we're talking about a $2 billion saving for airlines because a lot of it is still done manually, a lot of it is error prone. So, really, just the most basic version of the app has the ability to save $2 billion worth of cost, never mind where this kind of application goes. And this was because it reduced error rates, it increased the efficiency. You can only sell a ticket for a passenger going from one aircraft to another if you can guarantee within 90 minutes you move the cargo from the one plane to the other. This shortened that window,
Yeah.
meaning many more connecting flights would be able to be sold. So the knock on effects are significant. It's one we're really excited about.
Okay. Okay. That's really awesome. And for example, what key factors determine whether a business is ready for blockchain adoption?
So not all businesses have problems that warrant a blockchain. So I think first we got to specify that it's a business that has a blockchain shaped problem. And there
Okay.
are many areas that people have adopted in the past because of flashy press releases where this technology actually doesn't belong. So the first thing is understanding whether or not you have a problem that needs to be solved by a blockchain. Now, a high level way for a big chunk of the problems, not all of them, is to look at, do you have processes that involve multiple different parties with different incentives where you have to come to consensus around something, right? So in aviation, you have many different people moving a bag, many different companies touching that bag from A to Z. And those parties all have to work together and agree on where the bag is, how it's moving, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the kind of shape of these. And then I mean, it's a process to adopt any new technology. No big business is just going to go from day one at zero to day two at 100%. It's then understanding what does that journey look like? How can you do the test case in as non-risky an environment as possible? But now there's a big thing in the blockchain industry where loads of people did proof of concepts that didn't convert into multi-year commercial contracts. So many suppliers don't want to just do proof of concepts, but many businesses don't want to just jump in with a multi-year contract. So a fair balance that we have found is you do a proof of concept, you agree transparent success metrics for that proof of concept, and if those are hit, you automatically roll into a multi-year contract. So it takes care of the concerns of both parties. And if you can build a structure like that and you find the right problem, that's how you identify blockchain as a solution for your business.
Okay, I see. And looking at the broader industry, what key trends are you seeing emerge?
Well, there have been some quite interesting ones. I already spent a bit of time speaking about prediction markets here, right? In the prediction market space, which is one of the hotter areas that have just emerged, we're seeing more of a convergence to big media outlets now, kind of launching their own in a world where fake information spreads faster than real information, and generative AI can create content so much faster than journalists. Big publishing houses need new means of generating revenue. So we've seen a convergence, or at least a trend, of these big media players, whether it's old media like publications or new media like influencers, starting to adopt this technology. So Galactic's a company that's kind of really Galactic Markets.io is really involved in that space. Then we continue to see the meme coin trend. I guess this is kind of core to the crypto DNA, right? The kind of DJing culture where the more meaningless the coin, the more fun it is to just kind of pump it and show the power of community rather than any fundamentals. So we continue to see ecosystems like Solana and various different projects in that space emerge. One thing that I found quite surprising is the decline of Ethereum over the last year or so. This move for people moving from Ethereum base chain because it was so expensive and it became so popular
Yeah,
to to layer twos, and now paying a fraction of the fees, but therefore the amount of sort of fees generated on Ethereum rapidly declining, and the market cap seems to be following that. That is an interesting trend to observe and see if the Ethereum Foundation kind of is able to solve that problem. It looks like there's some great potential solutions. So I think that's an interesting trend to observe over time for people in the industry.
right.
And then I guess at a macro perspective, just continuing to see the dominance of Bitcoin and it kind of finding its way into the real public world. I mean, BlackRock's now what, the fifth biggest holder of Bitcoin, something like that. So traditional finance is merging with Web3.
Okay, I see. And how do you see the relationship between traditional finance and blockchain technology evolving over the next few years?
I think it's only strengthening, right? We've seen the trend with Bitcoin, with the exchange traded funds over the last while for Bitcoin, Ethereum, the talks of various others. More and more capital is now being flowing into these kind of Web3 companies or tokens or through whatever mechanisms available. As the regulation sets, it becomes easier and easier for businesses to take part. We've seen countries talk about strategic reserves in crypto. The US has obviously announced it. Various different countries. China sits on a lot of Bitcoins. So I think we're going to see more and more adoption and merging of traditional finance and Web3. And we're going to see some innovation of kind of traditional banking business models, right? When you can move money so quickly with Bitcoin, I can send it to you, what, in 10 minutes? If we're on
Yeah,
Ethereum, we're talking about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It's not really acceptable for it to take 5 days for me to send you some dirhams to your euros or whatever, right?
right.
Like it's ridiculous that the traditional system takes so long. So I think we're going to see significant enhancements as well in infrastructure within the banking and finance world.
Okay, and how are these trends affecting how businesses operate in your space?
Well, it's making the businesses more agreeable to doing deals in this space. So it's seen as less risky. Now they've seen other people do it and have big successes with it. So it's leading to adoption. So I think all of these trends are
Okay,
ultimately driving what the industry's been speaking about for so long and got so excited about back in 2017. But mass adoption is really starting to hit that kind of exponential and growing
yeah,
quickly.
all right. And in your opinion, what do you think most business owners are getting wrong when they're trying to address this specific problem?
So when you say the specific problem, what specific problem are we talking about? The adoption of blockchain?
Right, right.
So I think a lot of people are still too focused on talking about the technology, on why this way of doing consensus is better, on why 10% more transactions per second is better. You know, these details that the end clients ultimately really don't care about. If their technology works and it doesn't fall over and it doesn't get hacked and it solves the problem, that's what you need, right? You want,
Right.
those are the things that really matter. Exactly how consensus is achieved. Is it a bit more decentralized? Is it a little bit faster? we're not at that degree of optimization making a major difference in the market yet. So I think that's one big element that we often see people struggling with to get mainstream adoption when they're speaking that language, and the person who's listening really just wants to hear, how are you going to make me more money, or how are you going to make me spend less money?
Okay. So, therefore, what emerging trends in blockchain technology should business leaders be paying attention to?
Well, stay on top of compliance and regulation, right? Because this keeps changing. China's changed their mind probably 5, 10 times on exactly how they're going to do crypto. The US has obviously had a big change recently, really staying on top of these emerging trends in the various different territories. I mean, we see now Tether might not even be possible. It's basically not possible in Europe because of Mika.
Yep.
So all of these different things, people need to stay on top of these emerging trends of traditional finance, regulation, and then just the hot sectors, right? Paying attention to things like prediction markets or some of the cool stuff happening. I mean, if you're more in the degen world, in the meme coin market. So it's there's always an area, no matter what your speciality and what your interest is, there's something to keep an eye on.
Okay. Also, what advice would you give to companies considering blockchain integration for the first time?
Find a provider you can trust. At the end of the day, a lot of people, there are a lot of startups in the space, and they will promise the world in the initial conversation and they might not be able to deliver. It's better to have realistic expectations up front and trust built between the entities and go into something as more of a partnership than just blindly kind of throwing things against the wall
Yeah,
and seeing what sticks.
great advice. And as you wrap up, what's next for Aventus? Any exciting developments on the horizon?
Next for Aventus, well, our ecosystem is very focused on app chains nowadays, right? So it's finding as many different projects that will launch their own ecosystem within our ecosystem and get our whole ecosystem support. So just recently, we launched the loyalty app chain. We've launched a prediction market app chain recently called the Truth Network, truth-network.io. So I think that's probably the most exciting development in the ecosystem right now for people to have a look at.
And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Aventus, what's the best way to get in touch?
So everybody uses different means of communication, right? So aventus.io, aventus.io is the website. All of our case studies are there and all of the different channels on Twitter at Aventus Official, the same in Telegram. So whatever people prefer, we are there, and even LinkedIn if that's preferred, Aventus Network.
Perfect. So thank you for sharing those insights about you, about your company, and about the whole story. And thank you for this amazing podcast session.
Thanks for having me, Alexander. It was good chatting to you, man.
Great. So see you in the next episode. Bye.